Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental, a two-man booth today. Dan Lust joined by Mike, Rev, Chenko. First of all, big congratulations to your off-bound New York Mets.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's just for the people that aren't watching, that are listening. I got the Mets shirt on. I got a Mets little bat from probably 15-ish years ago. A piggy bank apple. The Mets are in the playoffs. They're proving me wrong. This is another miracle team here. If anything's possible in baseball. I mean, the two teams that made the World Series last year aren't even in the playoffs. The Mets can make a run here. Anything can happen in baseball. So, I
Don't
think, I
get
think
too
I'm back
carried
on the
away.
train.
The Mets are a cursed franchise, so let's not get too excited.
All my
I
teams
will
are.
say, before we get into the topics, I placed, I guess most of our listeners will know the scenarios that happened. I was fortunate enough to be at New York Law School teaching on Monday, brought this scenario up. And Mike, we did not discuss this ahead of time. I told you I had somewhat of a hot Mets take. I think the Mets and the Braves should be investigated for collusion. That's what I honestly feel. You ready for this?
Sure. I'll listen to it.
So Monday, the entire baseball world stopped, and there were two teams that played games. It was the Braves and the Mets. They played a two-game series. The way the scenarios worked, if the Mets won two games, the Braves would be eliminated. Braves won those two games, the Mets would be eliminated. And the question is, who would make it if the Mets or the Braves were eliminated? The Arizona Diamondbacks. So you ask yourself, the Mets and the Braves are the only two playing games. Everyone's watching it in all of baseball. There's only two games to be played. Those two teams split. So one won one game and the other won the other game. What would happen?
The Diamondbacks, well, you said if they split?
Split. One team won one game and the other team won the other
Yeah,
game.
they both get in. So, I see where you're going here. That's
Let me
crazy.
just paint the stage, and I'm not sure everybody listening to this heard you as a Mets fan are ready to poo-poo this, but I watched those games, and I'm not a Mets fan. Okay, so what happened was the Mets and the Braves had a 1:00 game, had a very competitive first game. The Mets were down, they came back in the eighth, they lost the lead, and then your boy Francisco Lindor, who is not winning the NL MVP, which we do not have to get into, even though you recommended that bet to our listeners. He homers, he's the hero. Mets are in the playoffs because they have won at least one of those two games. Follow me so far. Next game, Braves' turn. Chris Sale was in the conversation to potentially start. They don't start him. The Mets put out basically, not like the best lineup of all time, but they had Alonso in the lineup, Starling Marte's lineup. It fielded a pretty good team. Okay. Watching that game, the Mets are not swinging at pitches. The Mets don't seem to try to be winning that game. Okay, but I'm not really concerned with what my eyes see. I'm concerned with what the bookmakers and the sports books are telling me. That was a one-run game heading into the seventh inning. And do you know what the favorite Braves were at that point? The Braves were winning 1-0. Mike, do you know what the odds for the Braves to win that game were at 1-0 in the seventh inning? Nothing.
I can't even imagine. The same minus 110. It's not.
Minus 110 would sound about right. You can tell me minus 200. Minus 800, okay, was the actual number. And the Mets were 5-1 being down by one run in the seventh inning, which is a one-run game, which shouldn't be 50-50. It shouldn't be minus 110. It should be like minus 150, minus 200. Only way that line makes sense, Mike. The only way, because I don't really care what my eyes say. I care what the books say, and the books are never wrong. The only way the game is fixed. Fix is in. That's my opinion. Okay. So thinking that there's no way the fix could be in. The Mets are going to want to eliminate the Braves, their in-division rival. I placed a large wager on the Mets. Mike, now I am an aggrieved party here because I lost money because the Mets didn't try. And then they had that BS era that came in and they made it 3-0. So it was a little less suspicious. I think if I was a lawyer for the Diamondbacks and I was a fan of the Diamondbacks, I think that these two teams need to be investigated. I do. I 100% think some collusion happened. And I'm not joking. I watched the game. The Mets, it just didn't seem like the Mets were trying. And they should be. They should be trying to eliminate the Atlanta Braves. I understand it, unless there was some little wink, wink, nod, nod. And I'm not jokingly, I think this should be investigated.
I mean, you got some support at the end of the game too. They were shaking hands and celebrating together a little bit, which is very, very
Just
weird
hanging
and
out with
like
the
why.
enemy. Let's have a big party. Let's have those visuals on the field. Not buying it. I think I just I think that's something I think some shenanigans occurred. But I'll just say it. I've been right. I've been wrong. Let's see how the playoffs shake out. But if I'm the Diamondbacks, I'm behind closed doors having a conversation with Rob Manfred. Let's see if we, as the general public, hear about it. But I watched that game and I didn't view that the Mets particularly trying that hard. And again, the line was very suspicious. We call that in the biz a rat line. That line made no sense. Get down to the roadmap. We had some interesting timing last week. We recorded the podcast, and I think within 24 hours, we had a major NIL story, and that is saga between UNLV at Sluka, their former starting quarterback. We will talk about that. We did talk about, Mike, you are likely losing NL MVP bet. Lose, and that's Francisco Lindor, will lose to Shohei Ohtani after his 50th home run, and now this interesting legal battle that has ensued regarding the Ohtani 50th home run ball. And then we got a lot of stories to involve the Jacksonville Jaguars. We will talk about the lawsuit involving the former employee that stole millions of dollars from the team. And now this individual is now suing FanDuel. We'll talk about an update with Brandon McManus, their former kicker. And then get some news on the conduct detrimental front. But Mike, I think we should start in the wide world of NIL, and that is UNLV versus Matt Sluka is the world. Mike, have you been following the saga? It's very interesting.
Yeah, a little bit. I actually saw their game this past weekend, and didn't look like they missed a step. So I think this is going to get a little juicy here.
Mike, you are right. The UNLV story is an interesting one because they're in the middle of a season, which is somewhat odd for what we're about to say. The New York Times has a good story on this. It came out yesterday, so I highly recommend reading that if you just want the written version. So I'll give people the highlights here, and then we'll talk about what seemed to have happened and how this potentially been avoidable. As rumor has it, on the morning of September 23rd, the then starting quarterback for UNLV, Matt Sluka, walks into the offensive coordinator, his name is Brennan Marion's office, essentially says he hasn't received all the money that he was promised when he committed to UNLV. So that sets off a chain of events, which essentially, or what ultimately leads to Matt Sluka saying, reportedly, allegedly, and I don't want to get in trouble for misreporting it, but by all indications, not to play another game for UNLV unless he has paid his full amount. So the reports somewhat differ, but what seems to be the consensus is that Sluka was paid about $3,000 of a total commitment to attend UNLV of $100,000. He's paid $3 out of $100,000. Mike, what percentage of $100,000 was he paid? This is a good one. You just need to make sure you're listening. Just need to make sure you're on your toes. So, that's a very small amount. And I'd say, just from being familiar with the space, $100,000 for a Division I starting quarterback seemed a little light. One of my students, I guess, knows Sluka from high school or went to the same high school as him. And it told me, gave me a little bit of background on him. But it seems by most reports that he was not intended to be the starter at UNLV, but he won the job out of camp. So he was kind of paid under market value, irrespective of this situation. But, I don't know. He says he's committed to, they committed to paying him $100,000. He's only paid $3,000. Goes into the OC's office, Marion, allegedly, and says, I need to get paid or else I'm not playing. Sets off a chain of events whereby UNLV puts out a statement that they view that Sluka's position, saying I'm not playing another game until I'm paid, has now morphed what could have been a legitimate NIL marketing contract into a pay-for-play system. I guess contemporaneously, the UNLV collective put out a statement and said, have not agreed to anything and to any terms of agreement, be it oral or written, with Matt Sluka. This begs the question. Collective didn't make that $3,000 payment. They're saying they're not on the hook to pay him $100,000. It doesn't seem like anything's in writing. It seems like this is an oral contract. Mike, here's my question to you. Paid Matt Sluka that $3,000?
I don't know, actually.
Good question. This is a quote from Sluka. Committed to UNLV based on certain representations that were made to me, which were not upheld after I enrolled. Despite discussions, it became clear that these commitments would not be upheld after I enrolled. So, a lot of, terminology here. You, in terms of NIL, are not allowed to engage in a pay-for-play system. The sole sources for you getting payment cannot be playing football. That's pay-for-play. I mean, at some point, maybe in the near future, that will be allowed and it'll be fine, but it's not allowed right now. The NCAA still does not permit somebody from getting we'll say a payment of an inducement to attend a particular school. Now, that's on the NCAA books. You could tell me that that's not lawful based on some various court decisions around the country, particularly the one at Tennessee. You could also tell me, hey, it happens with every single player that's in the transfer portal. But that still doesn't mean that somebody can say that aloud and expect no ramifications whatsoever. What Sluka has basically done, and his agent, I believe his name is Marcus Cromartie, with an agency called Equity Sports, has essentially pulled the curtain back. And now I'm not sure this musical chairs what happens to Matt Sluka. Matt Sluka, at least according to UNLV, has made an improper demand for a pay-for-play demand. Matt Sluka is not playing anymore. And Mike Kravchenko, as you mentioned, this was the 3-0 UNLV behind Matt Sluka, who wasn't particularly playing that well. But Mike, I think you know the answer to this. UNLV do in their first game in the post-Matt Sluka era?
I mean, nothing had changed. They had won 59-14. We were talking at Fresno State. I mean, that's no joke. They're number 25 now in the country. They are ranked. They're improving.
It's interesting when you have these, we used to say, when you'd have like a baseball holdout or, if it was a bad team, let's just say, let's say the A-Rod led Texas Rangers way back when, they would finish in last place, but A-Rod would hit 50 homers. A-Rod wants to get paid. Kind of weird for the Rangers because you're finishing in last with him. So you can finish in last with him. You can finish in last without him. Because it's a little interesting, right? Luka must have thought, hey, we're 3-0 with me. We're clearly going downhill if I'm gone. So UNLV is going to pay. Here's the interesting part, right? And where I think, and this is really why I wanted to cover it. I've spoke to, a couple collectives in the past couple days, and just schools that want to learn from what happened here. This is a complete, on a trust level, we'll say, right? And Sluka, I think, assumed that the UNLV community would come forward very quickly, make a demand, to get your $97,000, which I've kind of indicated is not, just by fair market value, it's kind of low for a Division I starting quarterback. He thought people would come together very quickly and pay that. Mind you, there's no, at least from what I've seen so far, it doesn't appear to be a written contract. So it's just kind of trust, right? Sluka is trusting UNLV that they'll come forward with payment. Sluka is trusting that, hey, I'm below market. UNLV doesn't want the blood on their hands of an NIL saga. They'll come forward and pay it. And I think to the surprise of many, myself included, this reaches the press. And it also, I guess we should mention, UNLV's collective came out and they said, we don't have a contract with him either. So then, Mike, as I quizzed you, who did this money come from? It didn't come from the collective. No boosters, as of this recording, raising their hand and saying it came from me. Supporters being accused of brokering this deal. So all of a sudden, UNLV, the crosshairs, right? They're in the crosshairs of an NCAA investigation. Matt Sluka, right, has the scarlet letter, once he enters the transfer portal about what school is going to, hire him. And, you have an offensive coordinator whose name is being dragged through the mud. You could have a breach of contract situation, even if it's an oral contract. So, Mike, you just have all of these alarms and bells and whistles going off at UNLV. Yes, top 25 in the country. I don't know. You're staring down the nose of a potential NCAA investigation. Is that a toothless investigation? Is the NCAA going to do anything? That's very fair. But that said, everyone's looking at UNLV. And I think where they're going to feel the ramifications most in these recruiting battles. And that's the conversations I've had, the past couple of days on the, just on the collegiate sports front. People are trying to say, trust us, right? If we bring you to school and we make a commitment for, let's say, $100,000, $200,000, it's never going to get to the press. It never would. And that seems to be an indication, and this not necessarily my words, but I will second this. It seems to be an indication of just a lack of organization between, the school, the collective, the kid. It's a really interesting story. One that I know has sent shockwaves through the community. We have a holdout mid-year that seems to have backfired in a very large way for Matt Sluka.
Yeah, big time. And NIL is on the move, so I think I don't think this is gonna be really the end of things like this happening within, especially the mid-major level, as they really get their footing there. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But UNLV is chugging along, so top 25.
Let's move on from UNLV. We will follow it. It's a very big story. I try not to cover all of the stories. I thought that one was interesting and worth covering. We'll do a quick footnote. North Carolina high school NIL is now allowed, as much as collegiate NIL is allowed, and that's for college-based athletes. High school is still kind of like a drip-by-drip approach. North Carolina, it's legal. The school in a state like Texas, high school NIL is still not legal. So a lot of progress to be made, but I'll cover it. And I just want people to know of the big updates in the space. Okay. Mike, I did want to talk about Shohei Ohtani, the end of baseball season. We have a historic occasion in baseball, the first 50-50 player. You can make any type of argument. The bases are bigger, the rules are different. You can't throw as many pickoff throws, whatever. I'm concerned with that. I'm concerned of this historic, first ever 50-50 season with a historic player of Shohei Ohtani, and why it wasn't just significant for baseball, it's significant for the law, because we might have on our hands a very expensive and very interesting lawsuit. Mike, are you familiar with the lawsuit in the past? Two litigants, Popov and Hayashi.
No, I am not. I'm ready to hear about it.
Remember those two names. Okay, you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
And people should see the video. And I retweeted this so people can find it. Feed, or really, you can look at it, find it on Google. Guy that emerged from so you see the 50th home run ball. There's a kind of a small scrum to get this ball. See a guy, like, I think this guy is in his 40s. What's his first name? His last name is Belansky. What's his first name, Mike?
Chris
Belansky emerges from this small scrum. The ball's hit to left field. It's hitting kind of like this picnic area of some sort. And this guy Belansky, he's got like the tribal arm tattoo. He emerges with the ball. He holds it up. He gets it authenticated. He's the guy. He brings the ball to Ken Golden of Golden's Auctions, one of the main, auction houses, and they're putting this ball up for sale, trying to get several $1 million from the ball. Okay. As the ball is being put up for auction, a lawsuit filed by an individual who's 18 years old named Max Mattis, Matus. He says, Belansky, you can't go forward at that auction because I had the ball. I had it. We got into the scrum and you stole it. And there's videos that shows that I had it, and I don't want you to go forward with this auction. The nature of the beast. This lawsuit's filed in the 11th Judicial Circuit in Dade County, Florida. And there's going to be a hearing on this case. I believe it's October 10th. Mike, does that sound right? Is October 10th?
Yep, that's correct.
And the ball is now currently up for auction, but the ball can't be sold, Mike. I think the date is October 16th on like the last date of the auction. Does that sound right? Maybe?
That is, yeah. Sounds about,
my God. This is why you're my co-pilot on this. Have the hearing date set for October 10th, but people are taking live bids on the ball right now. So the ball just can't officially be sold until the auction's over. They had I think they tried to sell the ball immediately for $4.5 million. That didn't end up happening. So this kind of auction is floating out there. It's under a cloud of discern. We don't really know what's going to happen. Interestingly, okay, I watched this video, Mike, okay, and I'll bring up Popov v. Hayashi in a minute. But I watched this video. The ball is on the ground. The ball hits the ground. There's a scrum. Guy Matus, who looks to be this 18-year-old kid, reaches over the railing, okay, and this guy Belansky is standing near this ball, and this guy Matus is behind the railing. It looks like Matus gets his hand on the ground first and gets his hands on the ball. And it looks like Belansky, for lack of a better term, this is going to sound inappropriate, but basically squeezes the ball between his thighs and kind of sits down. So he's almost like sitting on the ball like he's hatching an egg. And Matus's hand is on the ball, while Belansky seems to have the ball sitting in an egg position, like he's laying an egg or hatching an egg and warming it up. And his hand's also between his legs. There's two hands in between Belansky's legs from this video. But Belansky's kind of dominant position, right? Because he's sitting on the ball, or he's got his hands in it. So Matus is alleging it was a 50-50 possession deal, and Belansky just kind of out-muscled him, but he had his hand on the ball. That's the case, right? Matus on the ball, Belansky hand on the ball, but Belansky kind of had more body parts around it. So there is some argument that there was a 50-50 ball. Mike, I have a question. What's happened in the sport of football? Who would gain possession? That's my question to you.
Isn't it nobody? Can't you not keep a football?
If it happened during a game, my man, if it happened in a scrum, this is a true fumble scenario.
Oh, whoever I guess, emerges from the pile with it. No.
That's right. I think that's right. Whoever emerges from the pile with the ball would get it. And it's who had it? Unless there's some element of clear possession. This is football law here, ladies and gentlemen. Unless there's some clear possession before it's whoever emerges with it. So there was a scenario on the Friday night Miami Virginia Tech game. There's kind of some similar scenario happened, but we don't need to get into it. What I wanted to bring up, Popov v. Hayashi. Mike, in our 5 minutes since I've started talking, have you Googled this case, who Popov and Hayashi are?
Yeah, and I see why you're saying, I mean, this maybe sets the precedent here.
Maybe sets the precedent, Mike. Now you and I are on the same page here. Popov v. Hayashi is the precedential case for grabbing a historic home run ball. Okay, that's the famous Barry Bonds ball from years ago, and that's where two fans sued each other in court for who had possession of the ball, and that is a case that establishes. Mike, tell our listeners what is the holding of that case?
Which is crazy. They concluded that both of them had the right to the ball and neither could be deprived of it lawfully. So the best solution there and what they decided was that there was an equitable division so that they would sell the ball and split the proceeds evenly. So that's where it's really interesting that both of these people might come away with it. And I mean, at least some of the cash, not the actual ball.
You're right. The facts differ somewhat in the Popov v. Hayashi case. I'm not sure who was who in that scenario, but somebody had the ball. It looked like borderline established clear possession. It was pretty close. And then a wave of humans consumed them. And it was just it happened in a walkway. It wasn't a on the ground scenario. And somebody looked like they got full possession of the ball. And then 20 people jumped in a scrum, and then a different guy emerged with the ball. And the guy that emerged with the ball was bloodied and beat up and scratched and clawed, but a different guy had the ball. So sure, in that scenario, at any point that two guys had clear of the ball. If you watch this video, Matus seems to have his hands on the ball. Popov v. Hayashi, it was a scrum of 20 people. One guy had it at first and another guy had it. Now, if you told me the first guy bobbling the ball and then he got absorbed by this human tidal wave, I might say, I don't know, he never really had possession. But that's my viewing of, and, it's a property law class, so somebody might have actually, someone actually might have learned it in school as opposed to our sports law podcast. But I think the case, listen, it's not the same court. I think Papa v. Hayashi, I believe, Mike, is it a California court? It was a Giants game, so I imagine it's California.
Yep.
Man, I'm on fire today. I'm on fire today. Got to just trust my gut here. But yeah, I think that's certainly a case that's going to come up, and I think it's a case that, I don't. It's not a good precedent to set that if someone gets their hands on a ball, you could just I don't know, part of my French, crap out of them until you get it. That's a horrendous precedent to set. So I'm not ready to say that Matus is not going to walk away with $0. And even if you watched Matus's body language after Belansky emerges with the ball, it seems like he knew right then and there that he had a claim to the ball. If you watch it, so I implore you to watch that video. And we're watching very closely. Friend of the show, Darren Ravel, over at Collect, has been covering this very closely. And yeah, I'm not ready to say that this guy Belansky, Mr. Tribal Armband, is going to walk away with 100% of the ball here.
No, definitely not. And we're mentioning the scrum. I do want to throw out there that there's another person that also filed a suit claiming ownership for it. So there is, you say there's a scrum of people or a pile of people. Surprised that no one did it in the Popov v. Hayashi, and then now someone maybe is setting it here. Joseph Davidov is also filing suit against everybody that we already mentioned, and is only seeking $50,000 in damages outside of the ball, obviously. But it's I don't know.
What are his damages? Did he get beat up in the scrum?
Well, he said that, yeah, an unknown fan wrongfully jumped over the railing and jumped onto him, and his arm, and attacked the plaintiff, which would be Davidov. So the 50-50 ball comes loose and rolls into the hands of Belansky, is what he's claiming. It's interesting because, like you said, the video really does show Max and Belansky. So I don't know what happened in that scrum, but yeah, I wonder if there's anyone else that's going to jump on board and just try to get something out of this.
Listen, if Max, if you're listening to this, you want to come on this podcast, I'm happy to hear your version of events. I'm on the Max side of this equation, but we'll see. But we joke. It's one of my favorite concepts in the law and in sports, this concept of assumption of the risk. I don't think you can possibly sue for personal injuries in a scrum, the Barry Bonds 700. I think it was the ball that beat Hank Aaron. I'm trying to think which is the ball that had the controversy, but there was there's a Bonds guy that got all bloody. There's Papa v. Hayashi. If you are in a stadium where a home run ball is hit and you're sitting in the bleachers and that ball lands anywhere near you, bets are off. Tribal warfare. That's the precedent that's somewhat set, right? Whoever emerges with the ball at the end of the pile is going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, I don't know who this guy Davidoff is in the video, but it looks like the only two people that have firm possession of the ball at any point in time, albeit 50-50, Max and Belansky. So, but good research, Mike. And maybe you and I should sue, because if whoever wins this ball gets $1 million, maybe they'll just buy us off for $10,000.
That would be great. I'm right there with you.
I'm not supposed to file frivolous lawsuits, but I don't know what the basis Davidoff is suing for. Anybody in the vicinity, anybody could just sue. You could sue for emotional distress that you didn't get the ball, that you were close to it. How about that?
That's fair. I think that's good.
Okay, so we go from Ohtani, who at the beginning of the baseball season, it's been a really long year, was accused of being involved in this giant gambling ring. Somehow he's emerged completely unscathed. His former interpreter, Ippei Mizuhara, I think, hasn't been sentenced yet, but he will. Has certainly defied the odds in his historic 50-50 season. I thought this was going to somehow impact him. It did not. But we talk about that very large betting scandal. Mike, the largest betting scandal in the NFL happened with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do you want to fill our listeners in on the latest in the Jacksonville Jaguars scandal?
Yeah, we just got some updates from now an ex-Jaguars employee, Amit Patel. He filed the lawsuit against FanDuel, Betfair Interactive, and their other related entities that they're alleging, or he is alleging, that they exploited his gambling addiction, leading to significant losses. Which, I mean, I'm very interested to see, and you'll hear continued. It was filed in September, not long ago. I mean, this past week, and in the Circuit Court of Duval County, which I've lived in Jacksonville. Shout out the 904, and it's definitely interesting to see. I feel like the Jaguars are always under some sort of drama, but he's claiming that despite self-excluding himself from all the gambling platforms, FanDuel and all of their affiliates continued to allow him to place bets, resulting in losses that exceed $1 million. I don't know what how many wins he had, what the salary was, but it got up there quick. Patel's alleging that FanDuel failed to enforce the self-exclusion measures after he attempted to ban himself from the platform. He's claiming the company continued to market the gambling opportunities to him via email and notifications, and I guess the unsubscribe button wasn't working, but he's seeking $250 million in compensatory and punitive damages because even though he's acknowledged his own misconduct and serving time for it, actually, as part of a 6.5-year federal prison sentence, which is interesting. But yeah, he's really just seeing at whether FanDuel actually affirmatively targeted Patel to keep on coming up with the money for the betting, is similar to I'm watching The Sopranos right now. He's really,
By the way, did you watch that documentary?
You
watch that documentary I recommended?
Yeah, but I got to watch the show first before I watch the documentary.
You're going to have to watch the documentary. So importantly, Patel stole $22 million from the team. So $22 million, suing FanDuel for $200 million. Mike, make that make sense.
It doesn't.
Allegedly steals 1/10 of what he's suing FanDuel for. It's somewhat odd. And I should mention, for podcast purposes, daughter Dylan just came into the room and is eating what is that, a Nutrigrain bar? What is that? Yes, come closer. Okay, if Daddy stole $20 million from his boss, should we buy you?
Cotton candy.
Oh, Mike, did you hear that?
Oh, yeah. What kind of candy?
We buy you a lot of cotton candy. What else we should buy you for $20 million?
Lollipop.
Oh, okay. I think I don't have to steal $20 million to buy cotton candy and a lollipop. Dylan, that was so nice of you. Dylan, that was your first appearance on the podcast. Did you like that? And that was Dylan. Wait, what name should you have for the podcast?
Down girl.
Oh, Upside Down Girl, Dylan. Okay. Dylan's going to be with us listening. If you want to leave, sweetie, you can stay here, or you can the whole podcast. Yes, Mike, you can keep this in. Okay. So yeah, I find it as a very odd lawsuit. I'm surprised that this even got the headlines that it did, but guy suing from prison who's in the middle of a 6-year in prison I think he's in prison right now, right?
Yeah, he's currently serving time for 6.5 years.
Listen, what's described in the complaint, if anything, it's a world of FanDuel that you and I are not accustomed to, right? It's the high rollers. He's alleging that there's an individual that worked at FanDuel that was pumping him up and watching his account, and if he wasn't gambling on a particular day, he would message him. These really kind of predatory business practice. So I understand it, but I also don't understand why this lawsuit is happening now for the value that it's happening at. Certainly, I understand the concept. I find it a little odd, the whole nature of this lawsuit. Yes, I like the headline, but it's a world, Mike, that normal people don't understand. Normal people log on to FanDuel, to DraftKings. You bet, I don't know. I have friends that bet in the thousands a game, which is, I would say, somewhat on the high roller level. This guy was betting tens of thousands of dollars and losing at an insane level. The only one that's a worse gambler on this podcast that we've covered I think it's Ippei Mizuhara, Shohei's guy.
I mean, if we're talking about total number, sure, but if we're talking percentages, I might be there.
Patel, Mizuhara, and Kravchenko, the big three in losing gamblers. Well, while we were here, we did mention we had a couple Jaguar stories. Mike, fill everybody in on the latest in Brandon McManus, their former kicker. We have an update there.
Yeah, so McManus, former Jaguars kicker, like we said, another former employee of the Jaguars, actually. But the NFL, they've been investigating him for a little bit into allegations that he sexually assaulted 2 women on the team's overseas flight to London in 2023 last year. There was insufficient evidence, according to them, and that McManus actually violated the league's personal conduct policy. So it's interesting because the investigation included interviews with 30 people, and it just concluded, and basically the case is closed from any potential discipline for him. And of course, there's always, if new evidence is presented, it would be taken into consideration. But Tony Buzbee, who was also, we've covered consistently on here about the Deshaun Watson case.
I have some Buzbee news, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, he
was
also here. No, actually, so I'm ready to hear it. But yeah, I was just about to say he's the one representing the 2 women, and he said he was actually confused about the NFL's conclusion. So I'm curious to see if he's looking to schedule a meeting with the NFL's investigators, but curious to see if there's an appeal coming here and if they're going to be moving this. Because, yeah, I mean, McManus is free to sign with a team. I know there's many teams that are probably in the market for a kicker, and for McManus, he's one of the elite in the game. So I think it'll be interesting, but I'm definitely ready to hear the Buzbee news, as that's a common name on the podcast.
2 Buzbee updates. So yes, I'm happy we covered McManus. McManus, mind you, as you mentioned, is currently involved in a civil lawsuit involving Tony Buzbee clientele, the 2 airline employees that are suing McManus for what they refer to as being sexual harassment, sexual assault. So Buzbee, our listeners, our OG listeners, will know Buzbee as being, again, Deshaun Watson's lawyer. The lawyer suing Deshaun Watson for various these massage-based allegations. Buzbee was in the news, I guess it's 2-3 weeks ago at this point, for now representing a new Deshaun Watson accuser for this. What was a true allegation of rape, right? And I don't want to say true allegation, but the allegation itself seemed to amount to rape as opposed to just a massage that kind of went awry. So, we have a second sighting of Buzbee, right? And we're still watching that. I remember there was a lot of headlines that Tony Buzbee has video evidence to support this claim. I haven't seen that yet. Deshaun Watson's continued to play despite some, some and whirling that he might end up on the commissioner's exempt list. He's still playing. So supposed to meet with the accuser was supposed to meet with the NFL for Watson. I assume that would have happened already, but the fact that Watson's still playing, that video might not have been as strong as was originally may have been the case. But Buzbee's actually in the news for something that happened this week. Tony Buzbee, right? McManus, Deshaun Watson, and now P. Diddy. Tony Buzbee did a press conference, I think it was yesterday at this point. We're recording this on Wednesday, October 2nd, where he is now representing, Mike, are you ready for this number?
Please.
120 individuals who want to bring claims against P. Diddy Combs. 120.
Wow. I thought the Deshaun case was a lot.
100 men and women intend to pursue new allegations against Sean Diddy Combs. Houston lawyer Tony Buzbee representing 120 people. This is a quote. This is from his press conference, quote, powerful people will be exposed. I started this podcast not really as a fan of Tony Buzbee. I thought some of his tactics that he used again in the Watson case were a little Bush League. Buzbee has used that platform, and I think I know he's done a lot of big cases. Representing 100 people going after Diddy. Getting a lot of theatrics, but people know the name. In the last 2-3 years, Buzbee has got a ton of really big, heavy sports and entertainment cases. So I'm not going to say good for Buzbee. I'm just saying it is notable. But yes, Diddy, I'm here for it. I imagine we're going to get a lot of big names in the entertainment space that used to go to these Diddy parties, as they used to say. I don't know. You talk about video evidence. You talk about blackmail potential evidence. You have all these different people coming out. There's apparently videos on the celebrity videos on the black market being passed around. I'm sensing, Mike, this Diddy podcast, we really haven't covered it that much, but we're going to probably at some point have a Diddy special podcast with the amount of huge names tied to these allegations. But yeah, Buzbee is certainly one to litigate cases in the press. And if you were on the sidelines saying like, hey, I really want there to be a window into what happened with Diddy, I don't want this to be done behind closed doors, I want the attorneys to litigate this in the press, there's no one more likely to litigate the case in the press than Tony Buzbee. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for some nuggets in the Diddy case, Buzbee, I certainly feel is a good bet to drop them.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, that's at almost 200 clients within in the highest profile in the spaces. And yeah, like you said, athletes are definitely have been linked. You know how it is online, of course, but there's been different names floated out there in the rumor mill. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out and to make a statement like that too, that powerful individuals are coming. I think we'll be in for it on another episode.
Okay, speaking of another episode, I think we're about ready to wrap this one up. Mike, we have one announcement that we made this week on conduct. We have another one that I think will happen within the week, just waiting for a couple people. So Mike, you do the one that has happened and I will do the one that is about to happen.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's that time of year again. We had a very successful inaugural writing competition last year, so we're back with 2024's sports law writing competition. This year's topic is going to be sports and employment law, and it's really exciting. You're going to be there's a prompt on LinkedIn. We'll put it out. I'll actually read it real quick for those that haven't seen it yet. You're going to be analyzing the Third Circuit's rationale in developing the economic realities factor test for prospective student-athlete employment questions and the practical considerations of adopting this test as a uniformly accepted standard for assessing claims for employment protections by student-athletes. So is this test the best way to determine whether NCAA student-athletes should be considered employees and should they receive protection under FLSA? Why or why not? So I'm excited for it. I think that's a really good topic, a really exciting topic. Last year was awesome to see. It was super exciting to see the contributions. So excited to see some more. We had winner on for the last one, so I'm excited to see really where we move with this.
Looking for that prompt, you can check the Conduct Detrimental LinkedIn page. It's on. I reposted it as well. Mike, when is it due? When are submissions due by?
It's going to be due by November 8th, 2024. So a little under a month, or a little over a month, excuse me, from when this is released.
It's good prestige to participate in them, to potentially win them. And last year we had the winner of the competition on as a podcast guest. So for your resume, for your law firm bio, you can always say that you were the winner of the Conduct Detrimental Writing Competition, which, Mike, we had a lot of entries last year. Like, it was like, we did it for fun. I didn't think we'd get like a crazy amount of submissions, but we got a lot. Speaking of submissions, we also, it's our second year. So this is the second year of the Conduct Detrimental Writing Competition. Our second year of the Conduct Detrimental 10 under 10 that is awarding 10 people who have graduated law school within 10 years of their graduation for their accomplishments to sports law so far. So we asked for nominations, I think in June. We got a lot of submissions. I had to do a lot of the candidates, and it looks like we are about to wrap that up. Mike, how many? Actually, no, don't keep this on. But don't. I was going to ask you something bad. We're going to announce that soon. Let's just say soon. We have not reached out to all. We have let's just say we were speaking to some of the winners. We have to work out some logistics, but that announcement should be coming soon. Yeah, conduct detrimental 10 out of 10. I said we had some announcements in store, so yeah, I'm happy we're getting those things out. So we're trying to pump up people in the sports law space. It's a very competitive space, but if you can win a writing competition, you can be a 10 under 10. We'll try to help your job prospects. And I will say, Mike, one more thing. We've got a nice uptick in articles recently for condetrimental.com. So I'd love to see it. And it seems like a lot of the people writing for Conduct are listeners of the show. And by all means, if you want to write an article, you don't know what to write about, reach out to us at condetrimental@gmail.com. Mike, myself, or Bryce Goodwin will respond. We'll help you get set up as a writer. We'll help you think of potential topics. But that's really the easiest way to get on the Conduct Detrimental team, so to speak, and put that on your fancy LinkedIn that you're a team member for Conduct Detrimental. All you really need to do is be a contributor in some way, shape, or form. So if you write 1, 2, 3 articles, yourself a contributor. I'm totally cool with that. Mike, anything else that I'm missing conduct-wise, sports law-wise?
No, I think sports law-wise, we can wrap it up. We got a couple extra things I think that we should talk about the what to watch for. A big figure in baseball as well, on a little bit of a more somber note. We just lost as well with a little bit of a controversial figure in baseball. So I think that
we know you're clearly referencing Pete Rose. Let me just do an update on my what to watch for, and then I'll give it to you for Pete Rose, and we'll close this out. I mentioned last week that I said my what to watch for was something I haven't watched yet, was the Vince McMahon documentary. I've since watched it. It's incredible. As a fan of sports law, the whole thing is surrounded in legal stories. So I would, even if you're not a fan of wrestling, it's not a documentary made for wrestling fans. It's made for sports and sports documentaries, and just a very interesting story. So I always gauge those. If my wife will watch it with me, it will play to non-sports fans. So it's long though. It's a 6-part docuseries. I thought it was very well done. Essentially, Vince McMahon, middle of filming, like 2 years into filming, the narrative changed. So it was a fork in the road in terms of his legacy. So he went from, and you guys will, at least some of you will watch this, being, known as the greatest wrestling promoter of all time, or just the greatest promoter, right? Boxing, wrestling, doesn't matter, MMA, the greatest promoter of all time, being in, this of disgrace. So, and it's interesting. The interviews half of them are done before new allegations came out, and half of them are after. So you really see this man's legacy kind of crumbling in real time. It's very interesting. But I highly recommend checking it out. It's called Mr. McMahon. And Mike, I will kick it to you for the latest on Pete Rose. I'm happy you brought that up.
Yeah, I just think it's definitely worth mentioning, not just for the fact of all the controversy that really surrounds his legacy within the MLB, but just in general. Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest of all time as a player, career hits leader. I mean, he really signified excellence within baseball, like growing up. I'm sure as just Pete Rose was Pete Rose, but there's also so much that was surrounding, especially in a sports law capacity, the controversies around him. So it's kind of why he hasn't gotten into the Hall of Fame yet, but he had just passed away at 83 years old the other day from a heart disease. It's interesting now to see, because he had served and I saw they actually bring this up, he had served a lifetime ban from the MLB, and now that has actually concluded, there's a even bigger push right now to get him into the Hall of Fame. I'm seeing within a lot of the MLB communities and writers, and there's obviously that other side of the Pete Rose coin that so many are here to bring up during his passing. But definitely notable, have to bring it up, it's the one of the biggest sports law stories and athletes of all time, I think.
Covered this in a somewhat recent episode. I watched the Pete Rose Max documentary, which again I implore people to check out. It's a really good one. But the messaging of that documentary and the reason it was created, it was Pete Rose's kind of last-ditch effort to make the Hall of Fame before he died. And it's, people make a lot of jokes about Pete Rose. It's pretty sad. And I do I think from a baseball standpoint, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. I don't think anyone else feels different. But in the late stages of his career and his life, I don't want to say his career, but he started to get other non-betting allegations, like allegations that he was, potentially committed a form of statutory rape, and it kind of muddied the waters. And it's not to say that there are people in the Hall of Fame now that have squeaky clean records, but Pete Rose being on the fence, any other violation against him, being in the Hall of Fame is a privilege, not a right. I think it's a shame that he wasn't allowed in all those years because of gambling. I do, but I do think someone can make the case that he has other things on his record now that are going to prevent him from entering the Hall. And either way you slice it, he's not going to see the Hall of Fame in his lifetime. It's pretty terrible, but I don't know. I don't really have that many. I'm gonna bite my tongue. It was a lot easier for me to say bad things about people before I started getting clients in the sports space. I just think the whole situation is a real travesty. So condolences to the Rose family. And yeah, but I would recommend checking out the documentary Pete Rose on Max. It was very, very good. Okay, Mike, I'm getting yelled at. I got dinner plans tonight. So I got to get ready. My daughter has since vacated the room. She's ready. Apparently, Daddy is the only one that is not ready. So I got to get off the podcast before I get in trouble and make us all late for dinner. Mike, good luck to your Mets. And yeah, I think that'll do it for us here on Conduct Detrimental. And we will see you all next week, next episode on Conduct Detrimental.